Hey yo, what is going on, everybody? We are back for another MLOps community virtual meetup. Can you all believe it's been 3 years since we started doing this in March 2020? Actually, April 2020, I lie. April 2020 was the first actual meetup that we had, and wow. Right now, I can't believe it. 3 years later, we're still here. We're still doing it. Somebody is still listening to my horrible guitar playing. And today we've got a special one. So I am going to get out the guitar and I am going to bring our guest of honor onto the stage, but not before, we do a little bit of a musical improvisation to bring him on here. So Jason Dunne, you ready, man? I think we need to do something a little bit in this vibe. Jason Dunne is a senior product marketing manager at Tecton. Enabling data engineers, ML engineers, and data scientists to improve their feature engineering workflow through Tecton's feature platform. The feature platform. He comes from a background in data analytics, data collaboration, marketing technology, and has a passion for developer experience. He's an OG. We've got him on the MLOps community meetup today. Welcome, Jason Dunne. It's great to have you here, man. I am bringing you on right now. Where are you at? There he is. There he is.
On. Thanks so much, Steve. That was an amazing song. We were joking before we got onto the recording that I should go grab my guitar. Now I regret that I didn't, because you nailed it and really raised the bar for music on a Wednesday morning or evening.
You did not realize this was happening. You weren't expecting it. So, dude, well, I'm glad to have you here and presenting. I'm looking forward to what you're going to show us. This is one of the biggest or highly debated topics in the community, right? Fucking around with notebooks is no easy feat, especially not putting them into production. So what do you got for us? What is the fun now, and what are we going to see, man? I'll kind of hand it over to you. And then if there's any questions that come through the chat, I'll pop back on stage and ask them. And then at the end, we'll have a little chat again, and I'll see you then.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. And now I feel also like maybe I should have my guitar for the entirety of today's little session, but that's for another future occasion. So perfect. So yeah, let me just share my screen and we can kind of launch into the content for today. So yeah, we're really excited here at Tecton, but really just within the broader kind of data science and data engineering community. I think there's definitely this sort of like groundswell of excitement around notebook-driven development and how it can be worked more into your workflows. And in particular, today's focus, as you can imagine, will be around thinking about feature engineering workflows in particular, right? So this is a huge focal point, not only in our latest part of our product release, but just really as we think about hearing more and more from data engineering teams, data science teams, ML engineering teams as to how they want to really integrate more closely notebook-driven development into how they build machine learning models, and more specifically how feature engineering is sort of executed on. So so just a quick run through. I mean really the bulk of today is really will be done live within our platform, and within just more broadly within a Jupyter notebook, and we'll look at how we can actually execute on making sure that sort of feature engineering workflows are more sort of precisely executed on it, and have more of a sort of like a focus on improving iteration loops, and we'll get into all that. But just want to like very quickly run through a couple slides before we get into the fun part. So just for kind of context setting, I think a lot of folks are aware that our CTO and CEO of Tecton came out of the Uber Michelangelo team. And sort of a common example that I think really helps to sort of clarify why are we focused on all this, right? So real-time machine learning really is the ultimate goal that really helps to improve the user experience for the end user in particular. And I think this example really resonates with folks because most people have used Uber Eats and understand the example well. But here you can see an example of where how Uber Eats is built out internally, and sort of some of the raw data sources that go into that. So live deliveries, live driver locations, live restaurant orders, all of these things helping to ultimately inform this ETA calculation that's sort of a rough estimate or really a fairly precise estimate of what the predictions will be of what the outcome is for Uber Eats, and how users can expect the behavior to be based on a set of actions. So as we think about just in the broadest sense, before we even talk about concept of a feature platform or where notebook-driven development sort of slots into that, in the context of a real-time machine learning pipeline, you can imagine how a lot of these raw data sources then are translated into machine learning features, like in this case, restaurant order count over the span of 30 minutes, available drivers over 5 minutes, all of these things kind of factoring in to ultimately the machine learning model that drives these predictions that are visible to the end user. And this is a very sort of precise range, as I mentioned. Ultimately, you can almost think back to a different era, I guess, where you sort of call a pizza place and you sort of cross your fingers and hope that it shows up within maybe an hour and a half or something. But in this case, we've gotten to a whole new level of precision, a really cool outcome for the end user. So in the scope of today's sort of demo and example use case, I'll primarily be focused around fraud detection. But also we won't be too focused on just one use case or the other. We'll just kind of think through how feature engineering can really better improve machine learning models that drive better predictions and outcomes for the end user. So yeah, I mean, as we know well, I think if you're on this session, you're already aware of this very directly, and very maybe with some light pain points that come with this, which is that like building these real-time ML systems, while it's a fun goal to get to this set of outcomes and predictions, building these real-time ML systems is ultimately very hard, and then actually maintaining them in the end is that much harder. So you wind up with these very siloed, error-prone, brittle systems, difficulties with scaling. And a lot of this infrastructure, feature platform would work with very closely. And in fact, we're coming to integrate more closely over time, but you can see this kind of often very scattershot architecture that maybe you have internally. If you're already sort of building these things out on your own, you can sort of see as a little bit familiar. So yeah, so as we think about the concept of a feature platform, and again, I really want to almost kind of just broaden the scope beyond I don't want to keep blinders on of like sort of the Tecton view of the world. Like this really is thinking about like what is the motivation behind improving feature engineering workflows, and we'll even look at kind of the iteration loop for machine learning models and getting things into production, and how do you really sort of accelerate and make that more plausible and just really accelerate the pace of that. So here we're thinking about again these data sources, which I think if we keep referencing back this kind of canonical real-time ML architecture, you can these are very raw data sources that are a little bit specific to this particular use case. But if we think about it in this broader sense, we're really interested in this, especially I would say real-time application sort of end user inputs as a data source. And then, of course, streaming data sources like Kafka, Kinesis, sort of more to come in this regard. And then batch like Snowflake, Delta Lake, S3, Redshift. And ultimately driving this outcome of having the ability to really build and iterate quickly, centralize and standardize ML data, monitor and control costs, really power these models, whether it could be one model or it could be thousands really, but then all the compute and storage will show sort of on the next piece. But a lot of these things really help to make sure that you're bolstering and have like you're supporting your existing infrastructure. You're not going too far outside the line. It's kind of bridging the gap between how broken this can be versus kind of a more streamlined approach. And then ultimately driving online inference and offline training via the API and SDK. And so that was sort of that's sort of like the how, and this is sort of the what. So as we think about what a feature platform really allows you to almost prevent you from building and really just have sort of by default, you wind up with sort of the same set of data sources we just talked through. You can use Snowflake, Databricks, EMR as your compute and storage, more to come in this regard. And then sort of so this is where like the scope of today's session will really be focused primarily around is sort of like the feature repo, the feature store, feature engine. How do we kind of make that a little bit more, I guess, like flexible in terms of your workflows to be able to integrate in notebook-driven development if that's something that you're doing already, or maybe you're looking at integrating that more closely. But really the feature repo is with the end goal of like not going outside the lines of how you think about most likely your current sort of like GitOps workflow with maybe some CI/CD aspects to that, feature engine for transformation, and then feature store, maybe like what Tecton is best known for, but really like very core to what the platform is. And we'll show some examples of where that slots in. So yeah, and then I think just in terms of use cases, so I think, we use sort of the Uber Eats example to just kind of think through real-time ML in a more like tangible sense. But we'll talk through like what this could look like for fraud detection or fraud prevention use case, both in kind of the merchant and user side. Recommendation engines for sure would be a really common example of where this can be put to use. Real-time loan approvals, ranking search, dynamic pricing, personalization, and really sort of any number of others, but I think these are some of the core that we're seeing. So I think I'll just jump ahead. So we just launched sort of our latest version of our SDK, which is 0.6. And really the scope and focus of today's session is around notebook-driven development. Again, is a broader concept, not even necessarily as it pertains just to this, where it's not only just time to our product launch, is just something we're really excited about seeing more data engineering, more data science teams, more machine learning engineering teams adopt. So the ultimate outcome that we're really looking to like help to support and enable is, as you set up and learn the feature platform, you can kind of jump straight into being able to develop and test features directly within notebook-driven development as a tool, and really be able to just validate those features as you go. Then you can sort of generate training data, productionize those features through the standard kind of GitOps workflow, share and discovery sort of as sort of that like data collaboration piece, and then be able to access those features online. So this is really like, this isn't really a new sort of iteration loop, but it's really more about how do we like sort of make this particular step that much faster. So it's actually preventing additional iteration loops is probably the simplest way to think about it. And then also the built-in aggregation functions that come into play alongside that really help to support that. So I think, so this is probably where I'll jump more into like the demo portion. I'll actually tease it out with a short video from a teammate, and then we'll dive into the actual live session of running this. But just as we think about, like I said, reducing the number of steps for creating new features, it's really about being able to develop these and test new features within a Python notebook. So this is kind of an example of how you can set up your feature view and how you're kind of like what the logic is that underpins this particular feature, while not breaking any of whatever the approaches that you take to actually productionizing those features in the end. So So with that, I hope the audio goes through, but let's play. I'll play like a very, very short 2-minute video from Vince.
Hey y'all, this is Vince from Tecton.
And we'll dive into the live session. So just one moment while I just want to set this up a little bit with Vince's here.
Hey y'all, this is Vince from Tecton. Today I wanted to record this quick 2-minute video to highlight a new feature we've just released today that's going to be a game changer for data scientists and machine learning engineers. So what usually happens across the industry is data scientists build models and model features in notebooks. And when they need to deploy all of that to production, they usually throw the notebook over the fence to an ML engineer. The ML engineer has to pick it up, refactor the code to actually build production-ready feature engineering pipelines. And that's a pretty lengthy process. It can take weeks and sometimes even months. But what if data scientists could develop and test production-ready features directly in their notebook? That's exactly what we're enabling with notebook-driven development. We're making Tecton the fastest way to build production features for machine learning. So here I am in my notebook, and I'd like to build a new feature to see if that improves my credit card fraud detection model. I've imported my Tecton SDK, and because I've done that, I'm able to do things like retrieve existing features from my workspace or develop and test new features. So here's a new feature. We're computing the average transaction amount for a given user in the last 30 days before the current transaction. We'll want to refresh that on a daily basis, and we'll want to backfill this feature starting from January 1st, 2022. With Tecton's declarative framework, it's very easy for me to define my feature logic as well as my feature pipeline. Now that I've done that, I can validate my feature directly in the notebook. But I can also do things like combine this feature with existing features from my workspace and generate a point-in-time accurate training data set using this getHistoricalFeatures function. Tecton has now joined all of my existing features to my raw transaction data, but it's also computed my new feature values for my transaction dataset. So I now have a training dataset that's ready for a model to be trained on, so I can train a new model version, see if that improves my champion model's performance. And if that's the case, I want to deploy this feature pipeline to production. So what I can do is just copy this feature definition code into my Tecton repository and then throw that into a CI/CD pipeline. And that's it. My feature will be in production. Thanks for watching.
Perfect. So yeah, that was a really quick kind of run through, sort of from Vince's perspective of how we want to simplify.
Hey y'all, this is Vince.
Make notebook-driven development sort of a part of your larger, model iteration loop. And then I'm just going to switch over to, let me stop that screen share, and I'll just switch over to this session. Let's see. So cool. So let me just show what that kind of looks like. Firstly, we'll start within on sort of the feature platform side, and then I'll show you what that looks like within the notebook, sort of the notebook UX itself. So let's just quickly run through what this kind of looks like just from the perspective of when I'm on the feature platform side. So basically, within the UX, you have the ability to look at sources, entities, transformations, features, services, data sets. The rest is a little bit more on the administrative side. In this particular case, we're looking at ad impressions, keyword click source. We can click into any of these, take a closer look at the associated feature views. So in this case, we're looking at sort of an ad tech example of looking, okay, so we want to kind of drill down on this particular ad sources. We have the ad impressions, batch feature definition, and then all the associated fields within that. And then we have the entities. So we have ads user, fraud user, merchant, etc. So we're really trying to key in on which entities might be most relevant as you kind of develop and improve your particular model for this use case. And then you have the ability to say, like, these are a set of transformations, and these can be helpful just as we think about, especially like on, the materialization side pipeline, you can actually start to visualize, each of these. So we can see the sources here, transactions batch, the transformation is user transaction, aggregates by category, and then we see user transaction for the features and then the associated features with that feature view. So you actually start drilling down into these individual features. And then you just have the option to kind of, move through each of these individually. And then as we shift over to, and I'll just jump into Databricks from here, as you're setting up your notebook to sort of make changes or updates, or just really it's primarily about the development and testing phase. As you kind of drill into each of these, you can, let me shift to, this is a single cell look at, okay, so just make sure we're attached to the correct cluster. And then here we can see like we've actually just all in one cell, we can really easily validate this particular feature view. So here you can see we have the setup as, Tecton Get Workspace. So we're looking at just the prod workspace in particular, fraud users, the entity we're interested in, stream feature view. So we can set up all of the parameters within here in terms of sort of what the correct start time is, et cetera. Definitions for the user, defining the users, et cetera. And then as I just run this all together, we can make sure that we're actually validating those sets of dependencies. We're making sure we're validating the transformation, the feature view, and the feature service. And then looking at a little bit more of a broken out view. So again, let's make sure that we're correct or connected to the correct cluster. And then we're just kind of parsing that apart and breaking things down a little bit so that we can actually like separate each phase and make sure that we're covering what we want to. But just like to very quickly show what's possible, in this case, we can say, okay, I just, like I said, want to pull down, this particular remote object from a workspace. And then in this particular case, I want to look at how do we import these functions and then sort of assign them to the right column and look at the right user ID for each of them and understand a little bit more readily what's taking place. We can see here what this kind of delivers once the Spark job is run, as we show like the breakout of user ID, transaction ID, category, amounts, etc. In this case, none of them is triggered as fraud. And then we could run this next command. We'll wait for that Spark job to run, but you can see the output already from a previous time. And then this is the defining and the testing of the objects directly from within a notebook. So again, we're not looking to change in terms of how you approach the actual Tecton apply process is still done within terminal. But the actual defining and testing of those individual objects takes place within this notebook environment. So we really want to kind of make sure that we're coming to integrate in with your workflows as readily as possible. And also make it so that it's that much easier to kind of jump between various processes. So we can see here that the Spark jobs have completed. We, of course, see the same output as we saw before, which is showing the various categories, amounts. None of these are triggered as fraud, but then the associated merchants for each of these transactions. And then in this case, we see defining and testing of these objects directly within a notebook, right? So yeah, at this point, let me actually switch gears and we'll jump back into what the flow, as I pointed out, would typically be, which is that, so we're really keyed in here on thinking about the developing and testing of those features within this notebook-driven development environment for 0.6, generating training data, productionizing features, sharing and discovering. So if you want to go in and actually apply those features and make those changes, then you would still want to make sure that you're doing that within just go ahead once you've validated those features. You still want to drop those into an individual feature definition within a Python file, whether you're using Atom or it could be within notebook-driven environment within Jupyter as well. And then, you'll see those changes reflected back within your environment. So let me actually see if I'm going to stop sharing quickly and then see if I can switch to, let's see, actually going to switch to a little different.
Before we do that, the question came through in the chat from Pratik. who was asking, what happens if a feature depends on another feature, or is UI always shown from source, back from when you were given that demo?
Yeah. So if you're creating if you're creating a net new feature within just the notebook, and you're just trying to test and validate it, it won't conflict at all with any existing features because it hasn't gone into. It's not until you apply Tecton apply in a separate, which I think this video will help to show the context for. Once you apply and sort of manually paste that into either a notebook or, in this case of what Matt will show, within just Atom within your nested feature repo, then that's when it would start to conflict, and you need to make sure that you're not that your features are not conflicting in terms of feature definitions, and you're not overlapping in terms of any of the aspects of that feature definition. But yeah, within just testing and validating and developing a net new feature within a notebook, it won't conflict at all with anything you already have live in production.
Awesome. All right, cool. Let's see this video.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay, cool. So he's just showing kind of the tail end here of a remote objects example of how you'd actually go in and make changes within the notebook. So here he's switching over to what it looks like to add the net new feature to what he would prefer to see as a production environment, and that's what the end goal is. Through adding user transaction amount averages as its own, you just pasted that directly from the notebook into GitHub Atom. This could also be done from a Jupyter notebook, etc. And then as those changes are made, there are some final changes to make sure that it's actually assigning the right data source. So here we're looking at pulling it in from a known data sources, transactions, import transactions from entities, import the correct entity, and he's just assigning that up top. So yeah, just making sure that the feature definition is set up as it needs to be. And then once that is the case, then then you just switch over to the CLI. And so yeah, and also if I'm not sure if, so probably not everyone here is a Tecton user today. So essentially you would just need to jump between this text editor view into CLI. Then you're just Tecton apply will allow this to actually be run and make sure that this goes into production. Once you go to actually hit yes and apply this to this particular cluster, then that feature will become visible within this particular cluster. So pretty straightforward process, but the goal of this is really just to make clear. And here he's showing like the new feature that's has been added once you refresh and pull everything up. So this is the new feature that he just added, was user transaction amount averages. Yeah, so really that's it in terms of the production flow. And I hope that actually helps to sort of clarify the question that came in as well, like the differences between development and testing versus where that actually slots into the process in terms of actually going into production. So yeah, again, like just to reiterate, no interest in kind of breaking your current flow or how you approach your current structure and how you kind of navigate that. We really want to make sure that this slots into how you actually go about productionizing features today.
Awesome. So there's another question that came through, and it's, how is this different from TDD? I'm imagining it's test-driven development. Is this focusing on creating a test case at notebook level and then aggregating the test cases in a web server later?
Yeah. So I would say it's sort of it's less, TDD or yeah, test-driven development to me is a little bit more. It's more of like a set of ideal processes or like how you would go about structuring your workflow. This is sort of more tangibly about saying, how do you actually just make notebook driven? How do you make Jupyter notebooks or Python notebooks really core to how you, test and validate and develop your features before you go into production? So in a way, if you think about it, like you could even remove the test piece altogether and just say, hey, I really just want to, I already kind of have a sense of how I want to develop all my features. I just really want to make sure that and confirm that I'm pulling down all the right entities, et cetera, before actually go into production. So there's even a world where you could go about notebook-driven development without even really doing a lot of testing and without really going like the test-driven development route in a more heavy-handed way. But there is definitely some crossover. It does enable you to do better test-driven development. It's just, I wouldn't call it like the primary focus.
It's excellent. All right, so I'll share your screen again. I see that you got that popped up.
So yeah, and just to, I mean, maybe just to, I think we're coming up on time a little bit here, but just to quickly cover something that I think can be helpful as far as thinking about like how you can better serve features online in particular, and really enabling some of that like sort of real-time machine learning pipeline to be set up more properly. Another consideration that comes into play is stream ingest. So we now have an API that with 0.6 that comes along and allows you to basically allow you to bring in fresher data. Really, ultimately, the outcome of that is lower latency ingestion, and that's allowing you to power like these real-time feature pipelines. So I think this can really help support, in a lot of ways, notebook-driven development alongside the built-in aggregation functions that allow you to do a lot of these kind of like net new sets of definitions and allow you to actually navigate that a little bit better. So just want to call that out as something that can help also to support each of these sort of structures and flows for how you go about improving your feature engineering workflows. So yeah, let me stop sharing, and then I think, yeah, if there are any follow-up questions that folks have, happy to field them, or maybe I should go grab my guitar and we can close with a song.
You keep
Also, D,
man.
yeah, I know, for next time for sure. I should have tuned my guitar first. D, I gotta ask which camera you're using, by the way. That's a really nice.
It's a Black Magic.
Ooh, that's the real deal. That's like a
Yeah.
proper cinema setup right there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just being wasted on me. That's the sad part. So,
Well, the mustache is still going strong, so it's towards a good end.
Yeah, I gotta keep that one in fashion. So anyway, there is one question that came through, and feel free, anybody that is out there watching still, if you want to throw any more questions in. This question is like coming back to, I think, that test-driven development question. Will it not? So it's a nice concept, what this idea of this notebook-driven development, I think, is. And will it not suffer from sweet test sampling from developers?
Sweet, let's see, sweet test sampling. So, meaning,
Yeah, I'm not so clear on that one either. So maybe whoever wrote that can throw in the chat what exactly.
well, I mean, yeah, if they can, yeah, I'm open to like if there's a deeper context on that, we can explore more. But I think like one scenario that I can envision that maybe they're also considering is like if there are multiple users trying to basically develop and test simultaneously. I'm not sure exactly if that's where the question's headed, of like, from that direction.
It was, yeah. What is the answer there?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's ultimately coming down to this is purely about development and testing. So as a result, it's not till you go to actually apply something in production where you need to coordinate with other teammates of how you actually handle your GitOps workflow. Like you would only be pulling things down separately, and like at worst, maybe you see some light performance changes, but even then it shouldn't really be impacted, and you might even sort of benefit from some of the feature sharing that goes into it. The other like place my mind goes with that question, and with like open to more detail if there is some, but is also just like sort of, it may be tempting, like in that example, it took a moment to pull down like the fuller table as we're kind of referencing and looking at individual user ID and trying to reference that. There would also be the option to maybe just like, because this is purely development and testing, to potentially even just ask it to sample, like proactively say, hey, I only want to pull down every 10th transaction or something like that. So you certainly could add some logic to that feature definition just in the development and testing phase to kind of like accelerate and like just intentionally sample some of the data instead of pull down everything if you really are just trying to like quickly validate something. So
Nice. So the clarification came through and it was talking about easy test cases for it to pass,
I see.
forcing it to production.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you can set up. I think the more test coverage by default that you have, I think it will prevent things from going haywire in production. But I think like on the flip side, if you kind of, I think maybe where also part of that is there's maybe a question of like, if you're only gonna sort of develop and test a couple of small things here and there, you may not have enough coverage to like fully be validating some potential issues that would go up in production. So I do think there would be like, it'd be more beneficial in this case to add additional like validation points to make sure that you're actually like confirming and covering the most possible set of scenarios so that the use case is covered better. So
Yeah, makes sense. So Andrew's wondering if you have any other resources regarding notebook-driven development, because it looks great.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, where to start? So I think and that probably should have been even the beginning of the thing. So let me drop in a couple different things that I think could be helpful. So I think a good starting place would be let's see, I'm not sure if the chat, I'll just drop that into private chat.
Yep.
And then D, if you want to drop that into the main chat.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of probably your best starting place from like the feature platform perspective. And then like if you think about the broader, that'll link you out to the feature development workflow in the broader sense of like how kind of like canonically how we're thinking about feature development and feature engineering purely on the doc side. And I think, it's also, I mean, there's no shortage. I mean, even just like Jupyter itself has incredible documentation, right? Like we're not necessarily looking to like fully reinvent the wheel. We really want you this to integrate into like, if you already are all in on notebook development, Jupyter has incredible documentation. So I think if you go straight to, I think it's just jupyter.org, but yeah, jupyter.org with a Y instead of an I for Jupyter, then that really will like set you off in, I think, the best possible direction. But I think that, like I really would start with the docs for this. And we have a tons of content that is really telling the broader story of where notebook driven development factors into your feature engineering workflow. But the docs that I sent will be a really good starting place as you kind of dive into making this something more tangible. We're also soon we'll have like an instance where folks can just kind of log in and start using this notebook cluster just like I did for the demo. Sort of prior to anything else, you should be able to just use it right off the bat. So we'll make that available super soon, but I don't have a link up and live in that sense just now.
So the last question that I'm seeing here is, can this be self-hosted?
Yeah, not yet exactly in the sense that so you could set up your feature repository to be purely local on your own machine and even use Jupyter as like the file structure that you manage that repo from, and then just apply the changes from the CLI. But you still need like compute and storage. You still need a Tecton cluster. So both of those still that wouldn't be a purely local build at that point. But like once we have sort of the demo cluster set up and making that available to the larger community, you could just leverage that, and everything else would be completely local. So
awesome. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that notebook cluster?
Yeah, so the demo cluster or the notebook cluster that sort of this whole live session was built around is, it uses Databricks on sort of the platform and infra side. So that's why it kind of like kicks you over to Databricks for the notebook portion. And it essentially, I mean, I can even just screen share super fast here. which is that so like this is the notebook cluster that's just built for that particular use case. And we want to make this available to a wider set of users very soon. But yeah, sources, entities, transformations, feature services are all kind of set up here by default. And then if you go into sort of the platform infra side, and then you go straight to Databricks, it just kicks you over to Workspace, and then you could either have a shared notebook here or a user level notebook. So this is the notebook that we referenced in today's session. And so this is really what we want to make available to a larger group. But for the time being, this cluster would require a little bit of just coordination on our end to make that accessible. So
awesome, dude. I think that might be it, man. That's been awesome. I appreciate you coming on here, man. And you know what? I did not show you earlier, but I am wearing a little bit of Tecton swag as we speak. I've got on this good old Tecton sweater.
That's amazing. Well, I've got a sweater over the top, but because I'm a big Mountain hardware guy, so I've got double logos. But yeah, we got the matching Tecton gear.
There we go.
Amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate Tecton sponsoring this community, and also all this good old swag that we get from the Apply conferences is always fun. So anybody that is interested in checking out Tecton more, we'll leave links to all that. And hopefully you all have enjoyed and have a wonderful day. Jason, thank you for coming on here, man. This has been incredible.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dee. This has been a lot of fun, and maybe next time, if you have a few MLOps sweatshirts or shirts, I could just throw one on for.
I'll do the reverse.
Yeah,
once you sing me a song,
I'll send you a track and we'll workshop it. How about that?
I'll play it while we're waiting. I like it.
Perfect.
I like it, dude. That's all we got for today. I'll see y'all later.